Welcome to my channel. This is a place where we share a variety of stories that can help you relax and cope with stress. Before starting, I would like to ask you to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon for getting notifications of all our new stories. Also, give this video a like if you enjoy it. And lastly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. A woman in her early 30s was exhausted. She felt drained, not because she had done something strenuous, but simply because life had been too noisy. Too many people, too much traffic, construction work going on right outside her window, dogs barking, music blaring from passing cars, airplanes flying overhead. Even when she tried to shut everything out and focus on her work, there were still the incessant chirps of birds outside her window. In the end, she decided to take a long weekend off, escape the city, and go somewhere quiet. She found a wooden cabin deep in the woods on the outskirts of the city. It looked just like the ones she used to see in National Geographic magazines as a kid, nestled between tall trees with a gabled roof, a stone chimney, and a wooden sign hanging from a hook beside the door that read, "Beware of Dog." The surroundings were beautiful. Rolling hills, thick woods, and a clear blue sky dotted with fluffy white clouds stretched out before her. As she walked around the cabin, she could hear nothing but the singing of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind. When she got inside, she saw a big stone fireplace, a sturdy wooden table and chairs, a well-equipped kitchen, and 2 comfortable sofas. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Everything was neat and tidy, and she could feel her tension start to melt away. The owner of the cabin had also left a basket with some fruit and a bottle of wine. So after settling in, she went to the market, bought some more food, and then spent the afternoon reading a book on one of the sofas. As evening approached, she built a fire in the fireplace. The flames crackled merrily, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Outside, the sky had darkened and the first raindrops began to fall. Soon, the rain was coming down in earnest. The sound was soft, like fingers strumming on the roof, and somehow it was the sweetest music to her ears. Rain continued to fall throughout the night, and by morning, the world outside was a different one. All the trees and bushes were glistening wet, and the leaves sparkled with thousands of diamonds. The air was cool and fresh, and the only sound she could hear was the gurgling of a nearby stream. She spent the day exploring the forest. Tall trees surrounded her, forming a leafy canopy overhead. Sunlight streamed through the leaves, dappling the ground in patches of light and shadow. Birds sang sweetly from hidden branches, and the air was filled with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. When she walked along the stream, she could hear the rush of water over smooth stones and see tiny fish darting in and out of the shallows. As she sat on a nearby log, watching the water flow by, she realized that she had never really been present in her life. Always busy, always distracted, she had never truly lived in the moment. But here, in the quiet of the forest, surrounded by nothing but trees and birds, she was truly alive. The days that followed were filled with simple pleasures. She would wake up early, make herself some breakfast, and then spend the day reading, writing, or just relaxing. In the evenings, she would build fires, cook meals, and watch TV. It was the perfect getaway. On the last evening, as she sat by the fire, sipping hot chocolate and watching the flames dance, she knew that she would never forget this trip. The forest had worked its magic on her, and she felt more at peace than she ever had before. When she finally got back to the city, she felt like a different person. The noise didn't bother her as much, and she was more focused and productive at work. She also started taking long walks in the woods whenever she could, and even bought a small cabin of her own. She wasn't sure if she would ever be able to escape the city completely, but now she knew that she didn't have to. She carried the peace she had found in the forest within her always. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave us a like. We would greatly appreciate it. Also, let us know in the comments what you think about the story and tell us which characters you liked most. Make sure you're subscribed so you won't miss out on any new stories. Lastly, thank you again for watching and see you soon. The old cottage sat just beyond the sand dunes, a stone's throw from the wild Atlantic. It had been empty for years, really just a second home for the seagulls now, until one day a woman found it. She found the key hidden under a loose brick, pushed open the door, and stepped inside. It wasn't much, just 4 bare rooms with peeling wallpaper and dust motes dancing in the sunbeams that slanted through the grimy windows. But to the woman, it was perfect. She came in search of solace, a sanctuary from the noise and the chaos of her life. And here it was, a refuge where she could finally exhale. She kicked off her shoes by the door, walked barefoot down the hall and out onto the porch. The wind whipped her hair around her face as she leaned on the railing and watched the waves crash into the shore. They were angry today, frothing and churning, just like the sea inside of her. But as she stood there listening to their rhythmic roar, something inside of her began to shift. The salty breeze tousled her hair, caressed her skin. It carried the scent of distant lands and of crashing waves, of freedom and of life. In that moment, she felt more alive than she had in years. This wasn't a vacation. This was a pilgrimage, a journey to heal a tired and wounded soul. There were no phones or internet here, no TV or radio, not a single soul to bother her. There was only the sea. And so she spent her days walking barefoot along the beach, letting the soft, cool sand cushion her weary feet. She'd watch the crabs scuttle sideways into their holes and the seagulls squawk and fight over their treasures. Sometimes she'd find a smooth, flat stone and skip it across the surface of the water, watching as it skimmed effortlessly over the waves. Other times she'd sit on a fallen log and let the wind carry her worries out to sea, further and further until they were nothing but whispers on the wind. In the evenings, when the air grew cooler and the sky blazed with color, she'd gather driftwood and build a fire. She roasted marshmallows and made s'mores, the gooey chocolate melting in her mouth like sweet caramel. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple and pink, she'd feel a sense of peace settle over her, a stillness that was both humbling and terrifying. For the first time in a long time, she was truly present, anchored to the earth, connected to something bigger than herself. The solitude didn't bother her. In fact, it was comforting. It gave her the space she needed to breathe, to heal, to be. There were no expectations here, no one to impress, no one to please. There was only the sea, the wind, the sand, and the vast expanse of the endless sky. And in that freedom, she found a lightness in her chest that she'd long forgotten. As the days turned into weeks, the cottage became her sanctuary, the sea her confidant. The rhythmic roar of the waves became a lullaby, soothing and comforting. She swam in the icy water, her body tingling with cold, then wrapped herself in a warm towel and snuggled up on the couch with a good book and a cup of tea. She explored the nooks and crannies of the cottage, found an old guitar in the attic and learned a few chords. Her fingers calloused and sore at first, then stronger and more sure. She sang along to the wind as it howled outside, and the walls seemed to sigh and hum in harmony. She didn't know how long she'd stay here, but she knew she needed this time, this space, this freedom. She needed to remember what it was like to be human, to feel the sun on her skin and the wind in her hair, to listen to the waves and the birds, to be barefoot on the sand, to feel the earth beneath her feet and the sky above her head. She was here to heal, to remember, to be. And the sea, with its endless expanse and timeless rhythm, was teaching her how. The rain was coming down in sheets, blurring the neon signs and soaking the narrow alleyways until it turned into a river. Fed up with getting drenched, our traveler ducked into an alley to wait for the storm to pass. But instead of finding refuge, he found an adventure. Tucked away at the end of the alley was a bookshop, its windows glowing with a warm, inviting light. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. The bell above tinkled merrily, announcing his arrival to the old woman behind the counter, who looked up from her book with a kind smile. "Welcome," she said, her voice as warm as the light. Come in, come in. You look like you could use a hot cup of tea." As the rain hammered against the roof, our traveler sat down at a small table by the window and sipped his tea, watching the world get blurry around him. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the bookshop, everything was still and silent. It felt like time had stopped, or maybe it was just the quietest place in the world. The old woman left him to his thoughts, returning to her book. And for a while, our traveler was content to just sit there, wrapped in the quiet, watching the rain. But as the minutes ticked by, he began to get restless. He looked around the bookshop, taking in the towering shelves filled with countless stories. Each book seemed to whisper tales of adventure and intrigue, each page holding secrets waiting to be discovered. He couldn't help but wonder how many people had come through these doors, seeking solace or adventure, and how many lives this little bookshop had touched. As if reading his mind, the old woman set down her book and looked at him with twinkling eyes. "Can I help you, dear customer?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. He hesitated, not sure what to say. He'd never been much of a talker, not with strangers anyway. But something about the old woman's kind eyes put him at ease. I don't know, he stammered. I was wondering if you had any good stories." The old woman smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Good stories, you say? Well, that depends, doesn't it?" she said, her gaze drifting to the shelves behind her. "What sort of story are you looking for? An adventure, perhaps? A tale of romance? Or maybe a spooky story to send shivers down your spine?" He thought for a moment. I don't really know," he admitted. "Just something good, I guess. Something that will make me stay here forever?" The old woman's smile widened. "Ah, so you want to stay here forever, do you? Well, then I think I have just the thing for you," she said, her voice filled with mirth. She rose from her chair and with a graceful movement that belied her years, glided over to a shelf and pulled out a book bound in leather so worn it was almost black. She brought the book back to the counter and placed it in front of him. "Here you go," she said, her eyes twinkling. "A timeless story for a timeless traveler." He reached out a hand to take the book, his fingers brushing against hers for a moment before she pulled away. Her touch sent a jolt of electricity through him, making him wonder if there was more to this old woman than met the eye. As he opened the book, its pages whispering against each other, he felt a sense of familiarity wash over him, as though he'd read it 1,000 times before. The words seemed to dance before his eyes, weaving a tale of magic and adventure that drew him in, page after page. And as he read, he realized that this wasn't just a story. It was a part of him, a piece of his soul that had been missing, and it had brought him to this very spot, to this very moment. He looked up from the book, his eyes shining with newfound determination. He knew now why he'd come to this bookshop, why he'd chosen this particular story. It was because this was where he was meant to be, in this moment with his book in his hands, living a story that was as old as time itself.